Benvenuti a Open, questa è la prima giornata del nostro programma IDEE, dove presenteremo cosa rende innovativi delle idee che noi abbiamo trovato e cercheremo di proporre in queste giornate. Abbiamo con noi Eric Cheng da San Francisco, direttore della fotografia di Lytro camera, una macchina rivoluzionaria che permette di scattare una foto e solo successivamente decidere quale messa a fuoco utilizzare. Oggi avremo una piccola presentazione dove ci spiegherà come è nata, le loro idee. Adesso gli diamo la parola. Eric.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Eric Cheng. I'm the director of photography at Lytro. And I flew in from San Francisco last night. And I apologize that I cannot speak Italian, but I will give the presentation in English. So Lytro is a startup company in Silicon Valley. We're located in Mountain View, California. The company is several years old, but decided to become a product company. We decided to make cameras about just under 2 years ago. So when I joined, which was about 19 months ago, we had 8 people with the ambitious goal of creating the first light field camera, the first consumer light field camera on the market. So what I want to do today is talk about what the light field is and why it's something that is potentially revolutionary for photography. But to do that, I want to go back a little bit and talk about cameras, just for a few minutes. So this is the evolution of cameras. In the 1820s, this is what a camera looked like. This might have been a little bit later than the 1820s, but they were plate cameras that used silver processes, and they printed onto metal. And so if you look at the evolution of cameras, we had, of course, film cameras starting from the late 1800s, and these were the cameras that democratized photography. Suddenly, anybody could take a picture very easily and have, something that you could keep forever. Of course, cameras went digital in the late 1900s. We, of course, all remember that because we saw that happen. So the first digital cameras were very low resolution, and many people said they weren't going to be interesting. But of course, now almost all photography is digital. So I want to go back a little bit to the light field. So the light field is defined as the set of all rays of light traveling in every direction at every point in space. So this is how light, more or less, how light travels through space. So all photographs are derived from the light field. All photographs come from the light field. So what happened in the late 1990s was that there was computer graphics research that, for the first time, formalized the light field for practical application, real-world application. So this was all in computer graphics. And then what happened is our founder and CEO, his name is Ren Ng, started doing research in light field cameras, and along with one of his friends named Dr. Bennett Wilburn. In the 2000s, early 2000s, Dr. Wilburn built this camera, which is called the Stanford Multi-Camera Array. This is obviously an array of 100-something cameras, which was the first camera that could capture a light field. So this camera is the size of this room, this whole wall, and you can see each camera is tethered to a computer, and it required lots of computers and lots of computation. So this was the first light field camera, which was made in the early 2000s. What Ren did for his PhD thesis at Stanford was figure out how to take this camera and shrink it into the body of a single camera. So the resulting technology allowed us to create a light field sensor. So all of these cameras now exist on one chip, on one sensor. And that is what allows us to create a light field camera. So if we look back at this slide with what we're calling kind of camera 1.0 and camera 2.0, both of these cameras capture the same two-dimensional data, right? You have one picture, And once you take it, that's your picture. You have one picture. What this Lytro camera does is capture the entire light field. And that is rich four-dimensional data, multi-dimensional data. And this data is inherently 3D. And I'm going to show you what that means in a minute. And what's interesting about this is light field photography is very much computational photography. So we have a hardware change in the camera. It's not just algorithms that allow us to do this. We have hardware changes that allow us to capture the direction of light. And of course, that's all computational. And we can see digital cameras are also computational a little bit. So I'm going to help visualize the light field. These are, a conceptualization of light rays flowing through a lens and striking the light field sensor. So the key point is that the direction of light, each one of those rays, the direction of light is preserved at every point of capture. This is why when people ask us, how many megapixels is your camera? We don't have an answer because we do not capture pixels. We capture rays. So each point of capture is pixel data, the color and luminosity, the strength of the light, and also the directional information. So that light field sensor there is what allows us to capture this. This is the Lytro light field camera. Actually, I have one right here. You'll have some hands-on time with this a little bit later. Most of the front of the camera, this much of the camera, is zoom lens. So the lens is a large lens. It's a 8x, 8 times optical zoom at a constant aperture of f2. That means we let in a lot of light, even when we're zoomed all the way in. If you look inside, you can see there's the Lytro lens in the front. Behind the lens is the light field sensor. And we have our light field engine, which is all the processing power, and the battery behind that, and a glass touchscreen on the back. This is a glass capacitive touchscreen, which is very responsive. It's extremely simple. This is designed to be a consumer camera, and more or less like a point-and-shoot camera. On the top of the camera, we have a shutter button, and we have a zoom surface. The zoom is actually a touch zoom. You just slide your finger on the top, back and forth, and it zooms the camera optically. On the bottom, we have a power button and a port for connecting to a computer, which is micro USB. So what? What does all of this mean? First, we capture much richer data from the real world. What this camera is doing is preserving more of the information that is coming into the lens than what a traditional camera captures. This is the first fundamental shift in photography. This is the first time the kind of data that is captured has changed since those original cameras were invented in the 1820s. This is interesting because we're essentially have a computational photography device here. We have tied photography to Moore's law. Now, Moore's law describes how fast computers get faster and cheaper. So what we're doing is moving the power of photography away from optics into computation. And this is important because optics are not improving as fast as computation, so we expect photography to become much more interesting, much faster. So of course, there are many new display and interaction possibilities, and this is just the beginning. So this is the first light field camera ever, and we'll see it get very interesting much faster. So what can it do? So the first is we can focus the camera, focus the picture after the fact. So many of you, I don't know how many of you have been to our website, but we have pictures, sample pictures from this camera that allow you to refocus the picture dynamically by clicking on what you want to be in focus. This is an example. This is one of the first pictures I took with the prototype camera, and it's a friend's baby on a swing. And you can see that she's out of focus, and you can then refocus the picture after to make the baby in focus. So we can see how this is done by tracing the light rays. So if you look beyond the sensor, you can see that if you have the direction of light, if you can move this sensor, if you can move the sensor back and forth, you can reproject a two-dimensional picture where the light rays may converge. So refocusing a camera is exactly the same, it's exactly the same as moving the film plane back and forth. So this is what the light field camera allows you to do virtually. So in the computer, you just ask the light field engine to give you a new picture with the sensor moving back and forth. It doesn't physically move, it's all in computation. So right now, we can refocus the picture after it's taken. The other thing we can do is make everything in focus. I'm going to show you a demo of that. Now this one will be interesting. It's called a parallax shift or perspective shift. It's like moving your point of view slightly so you can peek around objects. And I'll show you a demo of that as well. These are all features we will be releasing later on this year. And of course, we have 3D in stereo, which is 2 points of view, like your eyes, and beyond. So this is the roadmap for what we'll be releasing this year through software updates. Now, none of this requires firmware updates because this camera captures a raw light field. So we capture all of the information that comes in, which means that when we release, for example, all in focus, all you have to do is go back to your old pictures and reprocess them, and you will have these new features. So let's look at some theoretical possibilities. We've had some people ask about adjustable depth of field. So at the moment, we have continuous refocus, and we will be releasing all in focus. But in theory, you can also adjust the depth of field continuously as well. So you can change what is in focus. There's also the possibility to have adjustable apertures to change the shape of the aperture. So you can have the blur, the bokeh, have a different look, like a star pattern or whatever you want. We can also do tilt shift. So, just like with medium and large format cameras or some special lenses, we can change the plane of focus in software. Okay, multi-dimensional visualization. I don't even really know what this means because it could mean anything really. We have a depth map, so we have essentially 3D data behind every frame in the light field, which means that, of course, you can visualize the picture much more in many, many ways. And of course, editing in the light field domain. So at the moment, you have the kind of editing that we know, like in Lightroom or in Photoshop. You also have the kind of editing that most people know, like Instagram, filters that change the look of a picture. So what does it mean to edit in the light field domain? Well, it means that you have the full depth map information as well. So, for example, you could have a picture where the things that are in focus are in color, and the things that are blurry, maybe vignette, maybe they're darker or something, or they lose their color, they go to black and white. Or you can insert three-dimensional elements as well. We don't really know. This is what we're experimenting with now inside the company. Okay, so lots of new things. Okay, so for whom is this camera? Who did we make this camera for? What we're finding, so we started shipping the camera in the US on February 29th. So it's been shipping for almost 2 months, which is not a very long time. But what we've found so far is that most people buying the camera are people who are looking for a new way to tell a story. They're looking for new ways to express themselves creatively. Of course, people who want to learn about what's coming, most of the professional photographers who have purchased this camera fit in this category. This is a consumer camera with a fairly low resolution output. So most professionals who buy this are buying it because they want to start learning about light field photography and what it may mean in a few years when we have a more advanced camera that has higher resolution output. Of course, we have gadget lovers. These are the early adopters that we didn't even specifically target because we knew they would be interested anyway. In fact, some people see this camera and they want it. They don't even know what it is, and they want it because of the unique form factor. Okay, so specifications. These are actually all on our webpage, and if you want, we can send it to you directly from our PR agency. It's an 8x optical zoom at a constant aperture of f2. We have an 11 mega ray light field sensor. Again, we had to invent the term mega ray because the camera captures something that is not described by a pixel. If you export a picture, a JPEG, it's 1.2 megapixels. So the two-dimensional output resolution is 1080 pixels by 1080 pixels. So it fits perfectly on this display. Each raw file, which are .lfp files, that stands for light field picture, is 16 megabytes. So these are large compared to maybe a point-and-shoot output, but pretty typical if you talk about a raw file. We have 3 different colors in 2 different storage capacities. This is the red hot model, which is 16 gigabytes of storage, 750 pictures, and graphite and electric blue, which are, there's a blue one over there on the table, and somebody here has a graphite one, have 8 gigabytes of internal storage for 350 pictures. The battery lasts a long time. I get at least 400 pictures per charge. Of course, that depends how much you play with the camera. Everybody will stop you if you use this camera and ask you what it is, so then you have to show them that you can refocus pictures. Okay, shipping details. So again, the 2 prices are $399 US for the 8 gigabyte model and $499 US for the red hot. We shipped to our first customers in the US on February 29th. At the moment, we are Mac only and are working on a Windows version, which will be released later on this year. We have mixed reactions to that. The Mac people, of course, love it. It's the first thing that's ever come out for Mac first, really. At the moment, it is USA only. We are in talks with distributors internationally, including in Europe, but we are backlogged now by 2 months, so we're ramping up production, and at some point we will start selling outside of the US. But I don't have an estimate on that yet. Okay, so I want to give a little demo of this camera. Oops, it's not running. Okay, maybe I'm going to take a picture of you in the audience. Okay. I'm going to take one from further away, and since I've already taken a picture of you close up, I'll take another one, if it's okay? Okay, very close, like here. And I'll do one more. What I'm going to do is put the camera into a mode we call creative mode, which lets you control where the focus of the physical focus of the camera is. So in creative mode, you can set the center of the refocus range. So instead of setting where the focus is fixed, we set the point at which you can focus around. So I'm going to get really close to your eye. Okay? So what I'm going to do is put the camera really close to her eye and tap on the screen. And I'm going to show you this picture in the software. Okay. One second, let me quit this. Too many things running. Okay, great. So when you plug the camera in, it automatically launches the software. The installer, in fact, is on the camera itself. So we can see it's copying all the pictures that I've taken recently, and these pictures are actually of some toys over there on the shelf. Okay, so it's copying 12 16 megabyte pictures, and what it does once it copies is it starts to process each one. So it's actually computationally quite intensive. You can hear the computer fan going on, and if you look at the CPU, It's doing a lot. Once you process each picture, it's instantly interactive in real time. So you can refocus the pictures after the fact. This is in creative mode, so the same mode that I used to photograph her eye allows me to take a picture where I can refocus from the front to the back of this head here. Of course, in this mode, some things are out of range. So now when I try to focus on this one, who's clearly Asian, I guess, things aren't quite as sharp here. And likewise, if I focus really, really close, it might be out of range. Well, that's actually in range. It's pretty sharp. So let's look at this eye picture. If I try to look at it, it should process it first. It should put it to the front of the line. Okay, maybe it won't. Let's look at this one. Okay. So refocus is what it does now. I'm going to show you one more picture, and then I'll show you where we're going with this technology. So I can focus anywhere from the front of her eye to the surface here. So these sorts of shots are very difficult to get with any camera because the depth of field is so shallow that once you take a picture, that's it. But with this camera, you don't have to try that hard. I just sort of tapped and then took a few pictures. And in fact, I only took 2 pictures, and they're both fine. They both look good. So this application is built for sharing. It's really built for online sharing. And at the moment, because our output resolution is screen resolution, we are focused on allowing people to share these pictures in an interactive way with their social networks. So I'm going to pick a few pictures. Let's choose, it's hard to see. Okay, let's take one of these eye pictures. Okay, so we'll take these pictures, and I'm going to share them. And I'll call this okay. I'm in Milan. Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is click share, and the software will upload a smaller version of these pictures to the web. So all sharing is done via our website, via lytro.com. So if you buy a camera, you can create an account for free and store your pictures online. And the reason we had to do this is because nobody understands our file format yet. It is totally new, and the idea of having interactive pictures is foreign to most companies. So what we suspect is as we start to sell more and more cameras and people start to use it, we will have adoption of this file format by sharing online sharing sites and also potentially people writing editors for this. Okay, so it's uploading these 4 pictures. Each file is about between 400 kilobytes and 1.5 megabytes, depending on the complexity of the scene that you are sharing. Okay, so it's done, and if I go to, this is my account here. I'll reload it. Okay, and you can see, well, 3 of the 4, let's load it again. Okay, so here are the 4 pictures I shared, and just like in the desktop application, if I click on one here, it loads a Flash player. Now, if I go to this web page with an iPad or an iPhone, it loads an HTML5 player, so it works in iOS as well. But these pictures are also interactive on the web. All of these are. And if I share this, I can share it to, for example, Facebook. what should I call this? An Italian eye. We are live. Oops. I can't type here. Okay, great. And now if I hit share, if I go to my Facebook page and reload, okay, here is that picture I just shared, and if I click play, the player loads inline in Facebook and allows the viewer to interact directly in the Facebook timeline, which is pretty cool. So at the moment, Facebook is the only social network that we integrate into, but we expect that to change as we work with Twitter, Google+, some of the other ones out there. If you have your own web page, you can share this the same way you embed a YouTube video or a Vimeo video. You get embed code, and you can just paste this into your website. So we try to make it very easy to share this with your friends. You can also export a JPEG from the application. So from this application here, if I right-click and do right-click, export JPEG, I can export the picture to my desktop. And here, why don't we delete this one? We also support kind of rudimentary organization, but here's the iPicture exported, and it exports where you have clicked. And also the place that you've clicked, wherever you've left the focus, will be the default focus on the web. So if somebody comes to the picture and views it, it will start where you have left it. This is great for storytelling. Sometimes you can have a single picture with a reveal. When somebody clicks on a blurry part and something comes into view, it helps to tell the story, potentially. Okay, let me show you what we're working on internally. This is an engineering player, which is quite old. It's actually a couple of years old. And these pictures were some of the first light field pictures that we took with one of our prototype cameras. Now this camera we're using has a slightly larger sensor, so the pictures will look different. But you can refocus here. And in fact, in this player, you can refocus continuously, back and forth. We can also make everything in focus. And we can do that for some of these other pictures as well. So you can see that we can focus continuously here through her face, also to the background. This is the picture taken at a restaurant, and you can see that we can focus through the glass here, all the way to the background, and of course make everything in focus. Now this is going to be interesting. I talked about perspective shift and parallax shift, so this is what I'm talking about. We can actually move our perspective because we have this multi-dimensional data. So we're asking the light field engine for a different picture that's slightly offset. Basically, look at the light rays coming more towards the left, and you get this picture. And if you extract the light rays coming more towards the right, you get this picture. Does anybody out there shoot 3D? No? So if this were a 3D TV, we could view it in 3D with side-by-side or with the red cyan glasses. So we have 3D support natively in all these pictures. So when displays become 3D, then all of your old pictures can be reprocessed to be shown in 3D. And what's great is you don't have to think about it as specific 3D capture. You just shoot the camera normally, and if somebody happens to have a 3D display, they can view these pictures in 3D. So this is very interesting. And something we're working on for the shipping application. So all of these feature the same perspective shift. There it is. Okay, so are there any questions? Yes?
When are you going to release the video version?
Video version. So each frame is single capture, so the technology is compatible with video. The only versions that we've done internally are time-lapse videos, so we've done some testing to make sure that it works. But what will be required is to have faster processors, a lot of storage. So we know this is possible in the high end right now, for example, with RED cameras or something. But I think realistically, it's a few years out, unless we have some project that, ends up being very, very interesting, then we may rush it. But we don't know when video will be in. Yeah, whenever it's possible, basically. Yeah, but I think the video applications actually have more implications than a still camera, because all of these things applied to each frame can be applied to the entire video, so you have a lot of flexibility afterwards to do some, either make sure you got the shot or add some creative ways to interact with video. If we have a shallower depth of field, more blur in the picture, for us means more 3D information. So refocus, 3D, and the perspective shift are all related. And it's not absolute distance in the real world, it's actually by depth of field in traditional cameras. So it's funny because when a lot of journalists will look at this technology and think, okay, now we don't have to think about focus, we don't have to think about anything. But in fact, what happens is you return to the basics, to traditional camera basics, because everything is based on the depth of field. And so if you don't understand that, and most people do not understand that, it's harder to master light field photography. So most of the depth differences are in the close range, right? Not the far range. So that's something that it's the same thing with 2-camera 3D photography. If you photograph something further away or larger, you have to pull the cameras apart. So that's the same reason that the 3D pictures you're seeing here mostly are things that are very close or things that are very small, because our sensor right now is quite small. If we scale the sensor size up and the aperture size increases, then our baseline distance can increase. And then we can shoot 3D with human scale 3D much better. But what's good about the Lytro or the light field cameras are that you can choose any distance from the maximum down to something very small. So with the same camera, you could potentially shoot human scale 3D and also almost microscopic 3D. A ladybug, yeah, from even in the same shot, because it's all dynamic, you could have a shot where you move closer to a subject and maintain the right sort of convergence, basically, or the right baseline distance between the two cameras. You just move them in as you move in. So that's something we haven't seen yet, except in animation. So applying that to the real world will be very powerful.
Grazie per essere venuti qui, siamo a Open, come vi ho detto all'inizio. Open è una serie di eventi organizzati da Zero e Vodafone che si occupano di parlare di come la tecnologia, internet e l'arte possono essere uniti per creare qualcosa di innovativo, come per esempio è stata Lytro Camera. Domani avremo un'altra presentazione, sempre innovativa come Lytro Camera, avremo Lytro Printer, sarà qui alle 11:30. Grazie a tutti.